All right, we be live. Hi, Rivka. We're here with Rivka.
Hi, it's been a while, you guys.
Yes, we missed you here on the channel. Guys, if you like Rivka back, actually, you should. There's no if. Make sure you like the stream. Make sure everybody right now like the stream. Okay, this is very important. Before you do anything, before you start typing something in the comments in the chat, live chat or something, because guys, the likes at the beginning of the stream will get more people. YouTube will go like, oh my god, this is a very active stream, so it will go grab people and like bring them here. So it's very important that you do that at the beginning. So yeah, people are saying done the liking. Thank you so much. And I also have my eye on the monetization. Let me actually see. Are we still monetized? Yes, we're still. This is green, so I keep refreshing it, and we'll see if it's still monetized. Yes, still monetized. So we're good. So we'll try to figure out what do we say, what do me and Rivka say at in the middle of the show that will get the demonetization trigger, start taking effect. But anyway, so Rivka and I have some clips here that we have selected from Instagram, from TikTok, and from Twitter, and that we're going to respond to them. So right now we have a mix of people that are anti-Israel or pro-Israel or something in between. Also, some clips of some events. But going forward, me and Rivka were discussing before we go live, we're going to try to focus more heavily on these streams on anti-Israel videos. So today we're gonna have a few that are pro, but I think it's better use of our time if we focus on the ones that are against Israel, just so that we have a response to it. Just because there's a lot of these are just circulating on, especially on TikTok and Instagram, and a lot of people watch them and just agree with them without questioning them. So I think it's our time would be very well spent if we provide a pushback. Do you agree, Rivka?
Yeah, I do. And I think it's really important to have a pushback because there's so much stuff out there that isn't true or that's conflated or they don't know what they're talking about or they're even making stuff up. So it's helpful to be able to, for us to be able to push back, and also for the people who listen to our show rather, so that if they hear people saying that, they can say, oh, actually, I know people don't like the well, actually, but I just did it. But in fact, I know that that isn't true because, or, I think it's good for people to hear
Yeah.
that we're pushing back against it and what the real arguments are or what the truth is.
Yeah. Also, I am happy to announce that we have been demonetized. We have been demonetized already. Okay, so I don't know what happened with Susanna when we do the news. Even when we say the most controversial stuff, we were managed to stay monetized for 2 hours on the last stream, but right now 2 minutes, and it's gone. And it's gone. It's gone. I don't know what
I
the hell.
said, well,
I have no.
actually, that was it.
It was that. Oh my god. I don't know what happened here. Is it
Well,
this time? Yeah.
there was a comment that said, was it the pro-Israel mention? Like, I don't know. I don't,
Yeah.
I don't know, but we were just saying anti. So I thought maybe that if it was that, they'd be like, okay, you get the money.
No, I
I
don't.
don't know.
uh, I don't know. I don't. But this title seems to trigger it all the time. But it's a really good title. I don't. I'm not going to. I'm going to keep using this title for these streams. But guys, please use super chat to, you know, make up for the fact that we've been demonetized. And speaking of super chats and super stickers, we did have Ramo already provided us with a super sticker, which is a lemon. It's a dancing lemon. Thank you so much, Ramo, for the $5 Canadian. Appreciate that. All right. Yeah, YouTube gods are mysterious. Exactly. All right, so let's get into the videos. Which I'm gonna start with some pro just to get easy into it, because I think like going in, this is actually better. Hold on, let me bring this one up
The reason
and make us bigger. Not like that. All right, so let's watch this one. What's the context for this one? This
is a
is
guy who lives in Israel. He is an Arab Israeli, and he grew up in a sort of anti-Israel environment, school, things like that. And he purports himself to have been a rationalist thinker, and he started looking at things around him, and he changed his mind. Like, he's like, I don't understand some of the hatred, some of the irrational hatred, illogical things. And so he makes a video now talking about how he kind of switched.
Okay. So he just he was an anti-Israeli Arab, and he critically looked at the data and he changed his opinion. So let's just watch it
he
through.
grew up that way. I don't know if he was, but as he was growing up, he's like, I don't think this makes correct sense. Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
All right, let's see what his arguments are.
As an Arab, the reason I support Israel is not because I was born here, raised here, received free healthcare and very affordable education. It's not because I could have a career and establish meaningful relationships. The reason I support Israel is because even though I was brought up in such a hateful environment where I was taught to resent, distaste, and loathe Jews and the state, well, they told me it's the bravery and courage of that child that is able to stand against the tank. Rationality teaches me that it is actually the humanity of that person inside of that tank that is choosing not to shoot. And the more I questioned, the more I realized I was on the wrong team. So I switched.
Okay, I don't know about that argument working. So one thing that I like to do here is not to just unconditionally support anybody that agrees with us, and stuff that sounds emotionally appealing, to just accept that uncritically just because it happens to come to the same conclusion as us, because I support Israel. But the humanity of the person in the tank not to shoot at the child, that's a very low standard. That is a very low standard. I don't know. Am I missing something here? Right, go on.
I think that, yeah, I see what you're saying about you can't just be like going on, emotions and appeals to emotion. But I think what he's trying to talk about, at least how I viewed it, is this presupposition that somehow Israel is terrible, but it's okay to have your children throw rocks or use human shields. I'm thinking about it that way, that some of what the Hamas is counting on is the morality of their enemy, so to speak, that they don't want to shoot at these children, or that they don't want to kill civilians, or they, and so they're counting on this morality of their enemy. Now, I don't know if he could have said it in a more less emotional and a more logical way in terms of why he switched. But I think that that's at least how I view it, because, and that's not to say that Israeli soldiers are perfect and they aren't, there aren't some people that, aren't that way, that don't have these ethics. But I think that that's what that means, at least from my perspective, is I find it really interesting that people don't seem to see that argument, that your enemy is counting on your ethics and your morality not to want to hurt civilians. So you're putting those civilians in front. So what does that say about the people who are putting the civilians in front of their guns?
I mean, what you said made more sense, and that's a very charitable take. What I heard, which might be uncharitable, is I support Israel because they don't shoot children with their tanks. I'm like, that's what I heard. I mean, yeah, relative to what people think of Israel, a lot of anti-Israeli, that they think like, oh, they just want to kill civilians. That is, maybe sometimes that needs to be said, that these soldiers don't actually want to kill children, at least not most of them. They don't want to do that. Maybe that is a hot take these days, given how much people hate IDF soldiers. But in the real world that we live in, which we know, like, that's not what IDF soldiers, at least most of them, don't want to just go and just shoot children with their tanks. I just don't think that's that just seems to me like your standards are very low. Like, I support these, like, congratulations, you do not, when you see a little child and you're in a tank, you could just shoot it and you don't. Salute you, sir. Like, okay, like, is that what we're celebrating? Maybe I'm being nitpicky here, but yeah, I don't know.
I think there's more arguments that he could make, or different arguments
Right.
that might, but I think the point of this video, if you listen to the end, it says switch hate to love. It's all about feely feels.
Yeah.
It's about the
Feely
fifis.
Fifis, yeah, okay. Yeah, maybe sometimes we need the fifis again. I don't want to dismiss how our fifis. Yeah, I mean, I guess here's the thing: you don't have to always make everything that you say. Sometimes we want to emotionally connect with people. Okay, maybe I'm being nitpicky. The fact that there is an Israeli Arab there that appreciates being Israeli, that is the point here. Okay, maybe not everything you said has to be like a debate bro moment. That here are the facts, like, maybe, like, he's just trying to make an emotional connection with other people who think like them. Maybe I'm gonna try to be less nitpicky here. Okay, yeah. So, okay, fine. Let's go to another one. Let's go to an anti-Israeli person. Okay, guys, make sure you like the stream. Make sure everybody likes the stream right now. Don't you dare watch the stream. You are not allowed to watch the stream without liking it. Okay, not permitted. Okay. What is it? Okay. So, what is the context of this one?
I don't know. I'm not on.
Oh.
This is a TikTok video, and
Right.
I am unsure. And because I'm not on TikTok, I was having trouble, like, looking at the comments or searching. I was able to watch it, and that was it. I would like to know the context, because I don't know where she's getting this thing that she's going to lay out here, the plan or whatever. I'm not sure, like, what she's referring to. She could possibly be referring to Netanyahu just made some announcements.
We don't know what she said yet, so let's what she says. But yeah, I'm like, she's making a claim here, and I'm not sure where she's getting it from. But let's listen to her claim. But yeah, we don't know how she's coming up with these conclusions. But let's listen
or
to
who
it and
she
try
is.
to make sense. Okay, so her account is Na. So NA. No, her name is Noel. Her TikTok account is NAWALORNOEL. Okay, so full credits to her. Let's see her theory.
We heard about the plan all along, but now we know how it's being executed. Step 1, clear the north. Step 2, chase them from area to area in the south until they are literally cornered. Step 3, continue to unalive them while they're trapped. Step 4, force them into Egypt through the Rafah border. And officially, step 5, let Egypt build a buffer zone in the Sinai Desert as 1.4 million Gazans face displacement, which means the entire population of Gaza will be crammed into a literal box in the desert. Not only did these people go through literal hell for the last 130 days, they were unalived, starved, lost everything, displaced. And prior to any of this even happening, we're already living in horrible conditions just because they were from Gaza. And now you mean to tell me they're going to take every single person who is from Gaza, shove them in a metal cage in the literal desert, and then proclaim victory over H? I guess if that was the plan all along, they have officially succeeded. They have cleansed the land of its indigenous people, and the entire world watched it happen.
I mean, sources about this being the plan. Does she know where she's like? Again, I'm not saying this is not the plan, but can you tell us how you know this is the plan? Like, do you know, Rivka, how she thinks she knows this is the plan?
I'm not sure, so when you first hear it, so moving people from one place to another to prevent civilian death, okay, then going into Khan Yunis, because that's where the Hamas was. And then, but I don't know where she's getting this thing that Egypt is going to make metal cages to put people in. Like, I'm not sure about that. Like, that just sounds hyperbolic to me. And whose plan? Like Egypt's plan? Because she showed the headline about
Egypt is like always saying like there's no way I'm letting anybody in, like constantly throughout this.
Right.
This is the main number one red line of Egypt is like this border will remain closed and we will not allow anybody past here. This is the only thing we hear. The main thing we're hearing from Egypt is this. Their main red line is this. Yeah.
And their border fence is even more scary looking than the Israelis. I mean, it's got 3 rows of concertina wire, and I mean, Egypt is like, no, nobody's coming in here.
Nope.
And so I don't know whose plan, right? I'm assuming
Israel's.
There's Israel's exactly. That's exactly.
Yeah,
I'm assuming that's what she means, but with the cooperation of Egypt. But she showed a headline saying Cairo is building a buffer zone.
Yes, that's a good point. Okay, actually, you're right. You're right. Like, so her conspiracy theory. Again, I'm not saying your conspiracy theory is not true, but if you're saying it's true, you need to provide a source for me. The only source she has is Egypt is building this buffer zone, okay, in Sinai. But Egypt is the most picky, is the number one entity that is fighting against anyone going through. These buffer zones might be like for selected group of people, or like I don't know, just in case the border fails kind of scenario. You know what I mean? That might be it. But
and if you read this, it says, first the clickbait is the face displacement, but then it says Cairo is preparing an isolated security zone at the Gaza border to possibly house Palestinian refugees. So, like,
yes,
first of all, Cairo, Egypt, they're their own country. They make their own decisions. They're building this, possibly house refugees. I don't know. The other thing I think that maybe she might be responding to, and although not quite sure because of the timeline she's showing, is that with this military step into Rafah, I know that Netanyahu recently talked about, if we go into Rafah, we're going to have to have civilians evacuate that. So, how are we going to, and he was talking about moving, talking about it with the military cabinet. I don't know. So is she referring to that? Was she referring to when they first went into? I don't know.
Okay, so here's the thing, okay? Obviously, some people are going to get through the border, and some people Egypt allows to get through the border. These are selected group of people that have special cases and special, like they are,
and money. Sometimes people pay.
Some people have. Yeah, but this is a very limited number of people that Egypt lets in. This is like not even the number of people that get through and Egypt allows in is not. It's a small fraction of the population of Gaza. It's a small fraction. And if they build some refugee camp there just to be able to house these people and like monitor them and collect them and like collect their information and do whatever processing that they need to do, that refugee camp is not at all remotely close to something that you would build for 2 million people population of Gaza. Like, I'm pretty sure if Egypt was building something that could house this many people, this would be headline news, right? Given that it goes completely against everything that Egypt has been saying, that they were not going to do something like that. This is probably something a lot smaller than what she's making it out to be. Also, what she's showing us is something, because she's accusing Israel of having this plan, and then she's showing us something that Egypt is doing. I'm pretty sure Israel and Egypt would not be cooperating on such a plan, given that they have conflicting interests here. Like, if this conspiracy is true, Israel would want Gazans to leave and Egypt wouldn't. Then why would Egypt be cooperating with Israel in building this in something that they are against? This conspiracy theory makes no sense. Even if Israel, like there are some people in Israel that will want this to happen, that would want Gazans to just go to Egypt, it wouldn't happen like this. This is not how it would play out. with the cooperation of Egypt. So yeah, your conspiracy doesn't make sense. And also, I also want to point out, you go ahead, Rivka. I want to also point out something else after this, if you want to say something.
Point out what you want.
Okay, she uses the word literal in a very funny way. She used it 3 times, okay? So she mentioned they're going to go into a literal hell, which I don't think that's possible, okay? It's literally hell. You know, given that hell is a metaphor, I don't know. I don't think hell is in this world. And then she said going to put them in a literal box. So I like literal box, like, I don't know. That doesn't make sense either. But the funniest part was that they're going to be shoved into a literal desert. Okay. If they're going to be, as opposed to what? I want to ask her that. Like, do we have figurative deserts? Like, do we have, I don't know, symbolic deserts? Because I think most deserts are like, I don't know what could have been, if they weren't being shoved into a literal desert, what would have been the alternative? I don't know if you need to say literal before desert, but yeah, go on, Rivka.
So also to that point, that is the only time when she actually used literally appropriately. It is a desert. Sinai is a desert, yes. Okay? All the other times, what literal hell? Like figurative hell would be the right way to say that. It's like a figurative hell. But yeah, so I I understand your point too. Yeah,
but even if she, so the first 2 times she's not using it correctly, they are figurative boxes and figurative hells. But the only one time that she uses correctly is still not correct, because we don't have an alternative option to a literal like it's right. There's no other, as opposed to what? Yeah. So anyways.
Of the desert of her argument. Yeah. But no, I was also going to well, one thing that I noticed is she's got an American accent, and then she says Rafa, Rafa, it cracks me up when people do that. But anyways,
that gives her a sense of legitimacy. Like people are like, oh my God, she's pronouncing a ha and a re. She must know something that we do not. This conspiracy must be true, given that she's saying ra.
So, but another point I wanted to make was that she's making all these assumptions, and she's saying all these things that it seems like people are already accepting as true. For example, when she was saying, here's all these things that happen to people, and they were already living in the most horrible conditions. Some people, maybe, but if you look, there's tons of videos on TikTok of people showing, look how beautiful Gaza was. Water parks, mansions, people were able to move freely, or not all of them, but some. There were, I think, 19,000 permits for Gazans to work in Israel before the 7th. So people were moving in and out. People were making money. People were leaving and coming back. I mean, so I'm not sure what she's trying to say is that it was already a literal hell and now it's a extra literal hell. Like this argument that it was just the worst place on earth. It was, sure, it may not be the greatest. It may not be Monaco, but it also isn't this concentration campy type, or it wasn't prior to this, horrible place of ultimate suffering. But the point I'm making is that there's these arguments that people are already accepting as true, and then they build other arguments off of those. And so you have this whole crowd of people that believe these things, and then they build all these other non-truths or untruths off of it, or half-truths. So I just wanted to bring that point up. And where she gets the metal cage, like what metal cage? Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there are so many journalists there taking pictures. I'm pretty sure if they were building metal cages to put 2 million Palestinians in, or 1.4 million Palestinians in, that would be a lot of metal cages, and I'm pretty sure people would have been, that would be noticeable from space. That would not be something that you could hide, okay? And it's very strange that she has figured it out and no other journalists have. All right, let's go to the next video. Let's do this one. So let me actually see where this is, which I'm going to make sure I give credit to the TikTok account. This is Holy Land Speaks TikTok account. So let's see what this guy says.
Is this a joke? These are the countries that have joined South Africa in the case against Israel, the International Court of Justice. These are the countries accusing Israel of genocide. Turkey literally was the first country to commit genocide in the 20th century. Well, it was really the end of the Ottoman Empire, turning into the Turkish Republic. But the Turkish Republic was founded in 1923 on the genocide of Armenians, which every Turkish government since has denied, the ethnic cleansing of hundreds of thousands of Greeks, Greek-speaking people from the Black Sea region, the Aegean region, parts of Anatolia, that were ethnically cleansed in 1923 to make an ethnically pure Turkish Republic. If that wasn't enough, in the 1940s, the Turkish Republic instituted an ethnic tax on non-Muslim minorities, where Jews, Armenians, and Greeks had to pay more than 100% in tax. Armenians had to pay 232% tax on all of their wealth, meaning that if you were an Armenian in the 1940s in Turkey and you owned a house or a business or whatever you owned, all of that, 232% tax on that. And if you couldn't pay, you were sent to a work camp. It's called the Varlık. Look it up. Was that ever judged in an international court? No. Did the victims of those work camps ever get reparations? No. Oh, and it gets worse. In 1955, the September events, the Turkish government literally sponsored a pogrom, a riot in Istanbul, where Turkish nationalists rampaged through the streets and attacked ethnic Greek businesses, even forcibly circumcised Greek men in the street, essayed Greek women in the street, rampaged through businesses, caused millions, the equivalent of millions of dollars in damages, and forced emigration of Greeks fleeing the city. In 1955, Turkey was never held accountable for that. And what about the Kurds? Turkey is literally waging a war right now against Kurdish nationalists. There is no Kurdish state. Where is free Kurdistan? For decades, it was illegal in Turkey to publish a newspaper in Kurdish, to have a radio broadcast in Kurdish, to learn Kurdish. Is Turkey being held accountable for their war on the Kurds at the International Court of Justice? No. Venezuela, abysmal human rights situation. Journalists and opposition activists are jailed, tortured. Saudi Arabia literally has the death penalty for gay men and women. Being a gay man, being a lesbian woman, being trans is criminalized. Gay people are actually executed. That sounds like genocide because you're trying to wipe out LGBTQ people. Iran, that has been imprisoning and torturing and brutally unaliving protesters over the last 2 years. Students simply disappear. Someone taken Iran to the International Court of Justice to ask what has happened to hundreds of female students, protesters, who we have no idea what happened to them. So you've got a South African government plagued with rampant corruption at an apocalyptic level, backed by countries with literally the worst human rights records, or some of the worst human rights records of the 20th century and the early 21st century. And you all think this is a win for Palestine. This is your crew. These are your friends. Just add China and North Korea and you'll have the most oppressive regimes in the world backing this case.
All right, so before we respond to this, I just want to mention that we got 2 super chats, and I will read Erkin's later, but we got 1 super sticker from Why Is It? Thank you so much, guys, for the super chats. And also Noah got us 5 memberships for the people in the live chat. Guys, thank you so much. These really help us out because we have been demonetized. And I see one from Erkin, but I will read this after we respond to this. Thank you, guys. So, Rivka, that sounds like whataboutism, doesn't it? Like, what do you think?
Yes, it can. It definitely, well, what about these people? What about these people? What about these people? I think the point he's trying to make in the end, I think, is less where he's like, hey, these people are the ones bringing this as like your backers. It's interesting to me. It's very interesting to me, especially it is. But I also I can't help but I focus on Morocco immediately because Morocco has similar issues to Israel in terms of disputed territories, terrorists that they say that are involved in these disputed territories that have waged war on their country, Western Sahara, claim for it, other claims for it, human rights supposed abuses, other countries recognizing it, all these things. So that to me is what I was focusing on mostly, like thinking about. But yeah, it does kind of sound like whataboutism. I don't know. That's an argument that people make a lot, though, when it comes to these types of issues.
The way I would have phrased it instead of this, because the pushback against what he's saying is very easy. It's like, oh, okay, so you're saying because other countries do human rights violation, Israel should be able to get away with it because other countries do it as well. Or you might say that, well, why are these countries bringing it to the table? So somebody could say, like, well, it's not. We were hoping other more liberal countries with a cleaner record to bring this on the table, and they didn't. So this is what we have. This is what we have to deal with. So that could be the response to this guy. Like, oh, why is Iran or Saudi Arabia or Pakistan or Turkey doing it? They have really poor human rights record. If I was anti-Israeli, I could say, like, okay, well, we were waiting for France and Canada and Sweden to step up, and they didn't. So given that they didn't step up, well, what do we do? This is the only thing that we have to hold Israel accountable. So we take what we can get. That could be a response. I would make a different point. Instead of trying to do a whataboutism, I would just say, as somebody who supports Israel, I do want international pressure on every country in every war, including every country, like including Israel that I support, because with the international order that we have stays in place because of these checks and balances. We need these checks and balances. So as much as I support Israel to defend itself, I do want international pressure on Israel to make sure that there is some international monitoring happening. I welcome both. I welcome Israel's right to defend itself and the international pressure at the same time. What I would point out is, how come there is not the same level of scrutiny on these countries, right? I'm not asking for less scrutiny on Israel. I want that there. Okay, it's good. Keep it there. But why is it not? So what I'm saying is not whataboutism. Whataboutism is like, because these countries did this, Israel should not have international pressure. No, that's not that would be whataboutism. I'm saying everybody should get this level of scrutiny. Why is Israel getting it more? Why don't we have Iran coming to why are we not dragging the Islamic Republic of Iran to the international court? Why are we not dragging Turkey? Why are we not dragging Saudi Arabia? Why does Israel have to be accountable for its actions more than other countries? Is it because they're Jewish? Because somehow I suspect that this has something to do with them being Jewish. I'm not sure, but I suspect. But go on, Rivka.
That was the point I was going to make. Actually, you made it. I got sidetracked by talking about Morocco, because while I was all I could think about was, but yes, that is a really good point to say, look, these countries have these abysmal human rights records, or they've committed these atrocious acts. Why is it that 85% of the UN's resolutions are against Israel? Why is Israel the only one that people are dragging to the court saying they've done these terrible things? So I think that's a really, really valid point, because if you look at all over, there's so much criticism that Israel, done all these things. We need to bring these resolutions, but yet none of these other countries that he just listed that have abysmal records or have done terrible things seem to have the same level of scrutiny. There's a double standard, and
right.
Also another way he could have talked about it is saying exactly that. So listing, because a lot of people might not know that about Turkey. Here's the things that happened in Turkey. we're waiting for investigation into these. Here's what's going on in Iran. We're waiting, you know, where are the supporters for an investigation into these countries or these actions? I think that's definite. I mean, I think it's easy also to say, look, you do bad things and now you want to judge what we do. That's kind of a juvenile argument. You know, you've done the same stuff. You're not allowed to, you know.
Right.
So, yeah. But I do think it's
So-
interesting that he brought that up because a lot of people don't know those things. Those things need to be known, but maybe not in the context or the argument that he's making, the way he's making it.
Right. So, you know, a pushback against what I said is that, well, Iran is there is a UN-led investigation on Iran's, you know, treatment of protesters and stuff. So there is that. However, it's not brought into that's a UN-led investigation. It's not, but however, Iran hasn't been brought to like an international criminal court and stuff. So a pushback against that could be, that, well, Iran hasn't been accused of genocide. That would whatever human rights violation is doing would not be something that you could bring to the International Criminal Court. But you could bring Saudi Arabia to International Criminal Court for what they did in Yemen. I mean, technically you can't. It's yeah, maybe in Yemen that's something. They brought Russia into the International Criminal Court because of what they did with Ukraine, but they didn't do anything with Turkey, anything with Iran. I don't know. Iran doesn't have any. Yeah. So I think that this is a lot more complicated than a lot of people make it seem to be, because it's not about the severity of the crimes. It's about the jurisdiction of whatever the court or the legal body can cover. You know, sometimes it's a lot more complicated than people understand. Like, just because something violates human rights, or just because something is a really big violation of what we consider to be moral, it doesn't mean that it's a part of what the International Criminal Court covers, right? So sometimes there are different legal bodies in the international legal bodies that cover different things, and what is covered, like UN has this like different organization that is under the UN, and it's very complicated. So I think like making these narratives and pointing out hypocrisy within the international norms seems to be easy to accuse the UN and the international courts of these things. But once you actually go and study the details about what the processes are like, you understand why there is some apparent hypocrisies. Again, I do think that anti-Semitic views does motivate people to file complaints with Israel more than other countries. But I don't think within the international system, that within the way that the legal structure of these international institutions are, the way they operate, they themselves are not biased against a certain country. But how something gets filed, like what gets filed and what doesn't get filed, there is a bias there, and there's a very clear bias against Israel there. But once you go to how these international bodies take these cases and how they review them, the level of detail that exists, you notice that the process itself doesn't have a bias. Only which cases get filed and which countries are motivated to bring a case to these international bodies, there's a bias there. Do you understand what I'm saying, Rivka?
I do. And I also think it's important to know that this is a court, right? This isn't a resolution where a bunch of people say, we think this is good or bad. So, you know, you have to have evidence. You have to have standing. You have to have, now it's not quite the same as, you know, maybe a court case in the US that I know quite a bit about, but you do need to bring evidence. You do need to be able to have certain things. And often it takes a lot to get that. And some people aren't even signatories to this. So they don't want to let you into their country in order to look for that evidence. And it can take years and years and years of compiling it. And so I think that process in and of itself sort of flattens out some of the biases, because if you may have a bias and then you go to look for something to support it, you may not find it.
Yeah.
If you have a question and you're looking for evidence for or against, and you need to be able to bring that. So I think the process itself, in that fact that it's a legal process and all the things that you need to bring, does sort of flatten once you get past bringing the motion, right? The motion itself or the case could be biased.
So I also want to make a point that a lot of people don't understand what happened with the International Criminal Court, because the standard for showing that a genocide is plausible is very, very low. Okay, plausible doesn't mean that there is any credible information that genocide has been taking place. It only means that we have enough information to accept this case. Accepting a case does not mean that we have shown that genocide is taking place. It means just there's enough reason for us to just take a look. That's what plausible means. And once the International Criminal Court takes a look into the
possibility, not that it was.
Yeah. So it's kind of like for example, let's say I get accused of committing murder, and they want to take me to court. So they say, is it plausible that Armin is a murderer? Or like, okay, so he didn't like that guy. Okay, so is that enough? And he said that he hates him often. So that's enough plausible. But the standard that they have for you to take you to the International Criminal Court is just that. When they say it was a plausibility, it's just that it's enough for us to evaluate this. But because a lot of people don't understand how this works, they think that they look at the language. They say that the genocide was plausible enough to take them to the International Criminal Court, and they just run with that in the media. So the International Criminal Court doesn't find any evidence for an actual genocide being done by Israel. There's no evidence. They have not said, the International Criminal Court has not come out and said that Israel is committing genocide at all, ever, right? But because people are confused by how this works, just taking the case to the International Criminal Court is enough to stain Israel with a country that commits genocide. And this is what they're using the International Criminal Court for. This is intentional. They are using people's confusion about how these processes work. They are using people's confusion about the details of the the legality of all of this to just taint Israel with the genocide label, with a country that commits genocide. That is enough. They were never intending to take Israel to International Criminal Court to prove that Israel is committing genocide. That was because they know how easy it is to take Israel to the International Criminal Court. They just wanted that. They just wanted to take Israel there. And then now the media has this narrative like, well, Israel is committing genocide because the International Criminal Court said that there's plausible reason enough for us to take this case. And now a lot of people are taking that as the as proof that the accusation is legitimate anyways. That was the entire point behind all of this. But go on, Rivka.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really important point, and I'm glad you made it, because you could way to look at it is almost like in the United States we have what's called a grand jury. So they listen to potential reasons why you could bring someone to court or bring a trial against someone, and they can decide yes or no. That doesn't mean the person committed that act. That doesn't mean the person is guilty. That just means, yes, there's a they didn't even get to that level. They weren't even presenting evidence. Okay. So that's what I'm trying to say. It wasn't like they brought them and said, they have very small amount of, it wasn't quite like a grand jury, but yes.
It was very dishonest. It was, Rivka, let me add this before you continue. Sorry. Yeah. Like, for example, something when you look at the case that South Africa was bringing, like one of the things that they showed was like the comments comparing them to animals, right? To show intentionality for wiping out Palestinians. And if you look at the statements that they included as evidence, they omitted the part that the people that are using those statements, they go on and talk about Hamas after, because they purposefully omitted that, because some people argue that the comments comparing them to animals was not to Palestinians. It was to specifically about Hamas militants. But you could argue it was or it wasn't. I think it was specifically talking about Hamas. But why omit the part specifically? Take out the commentary that it was the guy made about them being animals, and specifically take out the ones that they mention that they include any mention of Hamas. That seems like intentional misleading of the evidence that they were presenting at the International Criminal Court. But anyways, that seemed like very biased.
And I don't even know that it could be considered evidence, as it could be like, whether it's exculpatory or not, or whether it's just they have documentation of these things, because we're not even talking about actually doing something. We're talking about the possibility, the plausibility of it.
Right.
And if you use that standard, that could be almost any military, almost any government, anything has the plausibility of this potentially happening. And they, they didn't find that they also, they also barely mentioned the fact that this is a defensive war, that barely mentioned any of that. If you didn't know and you just read this, it was almost as if Israel just woke up one day and decided to go into Gaza and get rid of everybody. And they definitely omitted a lot of things, as you were saying. And just the idea that something is plausible doesn't mean that it actually happened. But they know that people have all these biases too. And so they make these assumptions. Oh, International Criminal Court, guilty.
Yeah. So I'm going to make this last point, and then we need to move on. We got a lot of super chats. The lawyers that were trying to make the case that Israel is committing genocide, they are smart enough to know that that's almost an impossible task for Israel to show that for you to show that this was an act of genocide. You have to genuinely be able to show, this is a very high standard, to show that they are doing this specifically to eliminate Palestinians as a whole. That is a close to impossible thing to show with what's happening right now in Gaza. And everybody, any legal international legal expert will tell you that you could show, for example, you could accuse Israel of not doing enough to punish people that have genocidal language. You could accuse Israel of that. But there is almost, with the amount of stuff that is happening, it's almost impossible to show that IDF is doing what they're doing to wipe out. And that intentionality, you require that. You require that to prove genocide.
Absolutely, like, have to have the intent. The intent is a huge part of it, which is why I brought up them leaving out the fact that it's a defensive war. It's like they decided this.
So given that we know that the lawyers from South Africa know that this is almost an impossible thing to show, then what was the point? The point was not to prove this. The point was to bringing the evidence. This was just a show, because there's an international audience, and they didn't have to prove to the court that Israel is committing genocide. Their audience was not the court. The audience was the international community, and they just wanted to present evidence, what they call evidence, for the international community to get convinced that Israel is committing genocide, regardless of what the court says. The court didn't even ask for a ceasefire, just to let you guys know. Like, the court, by not asking for a ceasefire, it kind of legitimized Israel's right to continue with the war by not even asking for a ceasefire. The only thing they did was
point.
Yeah.
Because if they really thought there was this genocide, they would say, okay, we need to stop this, immediately.
Yes.
No.
Yes. The only thing the court did was just to remind Israel that they have the duty to make sure that they're not committing genocide, which is what already Israel is already signed up to, understands that it's obliged to do, and that was just a reminder. But go on, Rivka.
Also, if you look at some of the responses from like the Hamas or different foreign ministers and Palestine or other anti-Israel people, they say things like a Hamas official said, the ruling helped isolate Israel. They assess somebody else said, oh, they assessed the facts and they ruled in our favor. Not really. But the point is, that's to your point, is that it's not the judges sitting on the court that this case is addressing. It's addressing people like that so that the Hamas can go, oh, look, we've isolated Israel on the world stage because they were brought to the human rights. They want to create this idea about how they've been judged and found guilty simply by bringing the case. And it's not without, now this might be whataboutery, but it's not without merit.
We need to move on soon. Tell this fast, so then we need to move on.
South Africa has a lot of relationships with Hamas and other terrorist organizations and Iran. So that's not without merit in terms of the intentionality behind this.
Yeah, sorry for rushing you because we're 50 minutes in and we're not even halfway through our videos. And I know we need to move on. I just really, sorry, I interrupted Rivka, but I'm going to say something. This is very important. Rivka, what do you think about this? It's very important that the International Criminal Court didn't do this, because this will be a blow to the international legal system that we have as a whole, because people must understand that all these international norms and agreements that we have is voluntary. Like countries, the only legitimacy they have is because countries sign up to them. And if countries' rights to defense, their right to defense is being questioned in these international criminal courts or other institutions that are supposed to hold this international world order, then countries will stop signing up to them. If they think like, okay, well, what the hell is this? It's very important that these, whatever norms that we introduce to the world, recognizes every country's border integrity and the right for them to defend themselves, or else they will just not sign up. And if they don't sign up, again, this is the only reason why we have these orders, is because we came up with some standards that countries are willingly coming in and sitting on the table because this is good for everybody. But if it ends up not being good for everybody, then enough people will leave the table for this international order not to be. A lot of people complain about how little teeth this international order has. Well, if countries keep signing off from it, it will be even less effective than it is right now. So you have to try to get countries to want to abide by international laws, or else there will be no force to encourage other countries to do so. But
I'm going to make a very quick point. And I also think that in and of itself is to upset the order, international order, and this idea that we're accountable and we're going to sign up to these things and we're going to abide by the rule of law is part of the idea behind, Iran funding all these terrorists and the Hamas doing what they're doing in Hezbollah. That is part of it. They want to upset the international order.
Right. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Anyways, we got a couple of super chats. Thank you. Oh, before I read the super chats, the Islamic skeptic is saying, I am willing to join your stream. Well, I am on Twitter, Armin Navabi. My DMs are open. You could contact me there and we could set up a debate. Okay. So make sure you contact Armin Navabi here. You can see my name. Okay. If anybody wants to join me on stream and debate me, just search me on Twitter and look me up there and send me a message and we could arrange something. Okay.
Said there was a super chat that you were going to read later. Is this it?
Erkin? Yes. Erkin. Yeah, we got 3. So thank you so much, Erkin. Erkin saying, Kurdish situation in Turkey vastly improved. Now we have our state broadcaster and a few private broadcasters with 24/7 Kurdish broadcasts. Oh, well, that's great. That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for the super chat from Turkey. And Yusuf, thank you so much for the super chat saying, Red China's human rights record is so abysmal. Yes, it is. Well, thank you so much for the super chat. Guys, these super chats are really helping us out because we got demonetized right in the beginning of the stream. And we got a huge super chat, 150 shekels from Israel. Thank you so much for the shekels. Saying thank you all. Thank you for all the support. I got released after 117 days of fighting in Gaza as a reservist. Okay, my battalion was recruited on the 7th of October. I'm bothered that no one talks about how brutal the attack was. I still have nightmares sometimes. Well, I'm sorry. I hope that okay. Well, we try to do our best, and thank you so much for your support. I hope you're talking to an expert about your nightmares. Okay, make sure you go to a therapist and get some professional help. Okay, I know a lot of people get a lot of results by talking to professionals. I hope you're talking to professionals about that. I'm pretty sure you are, because in Israel there are some really good people that are helping out with that, and I'm pretty sure a lot of it is government funded right now. But anyways, thank you
for
so
your
much for
support, and also thanks
Yeah.
for trying to defend Israel, and also I hope that you, as Armin said, that you have some way to deal with the situation. I know there's a lot of services in Israel, and also appreciate you watching, telling us about your story, and Am Israel Chai.
Oh, thank you. Oh, look at this. We got another super sticker, 10 pounds from UK. Well, thank you for the super sticker. Guys, see, this is why we don't have to worry about being demonetized, because every time we're streaming, we get a lot of support on the chat. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you. And what is the super sticker? Is a Shibu Inu? Is a Shibu going thank you like this? Thank you.
So I just want to say one thing about that Israeli reservists post. He's saying he was surprised no one talks about the October 7th. I want to make sure that we bring up the fact that they barely mentioned that in that IRC, court claim. They barely talked, when they brought this suit, they mentioned it, but in passing, just barely. And so I feel for this person, that, I mean, I don't think people in the rest of the world have an understanding of the level of barbarity and how horrendous. It's a small country. It really was terrible.
Right. So I think we're going to be able to do only one more video. So I'm going to have to, let's do this one. Okay. What's the context of this one?
This kid.
You know this guy? Yeah.
Don't know him very much. I know he's on TikTok pontificating all the time and acting like an expert. I am not on TikTok, so I don't know him, but I see lots of videos where people are going, oh, this kid, and he says some mishigas or some, crazy thing or completely wrong thing, and then people are like, oh, no, but I don't, that's all I really know about him, and I think he's like in high school.
So he's becoming very famous now because of his anti-Israel takes, and his TikTok account is your favorite guy. So just wanted to mention his. Okay, so let's see what he has to say.
The definition of anti-Semitism is currently being weaponized against anybody who opposes what Israel's doing to the Palestinians right now. They're trying to change the definition to say that anti-Zionism, being against Zionism, means you are anti-Semitic. Not only are they trying to say it, they're trying to put that definition into law. In multiple states, South Dakota, Georgia, they passed a resolution in the House of Representatives, all because if they can define anti-Semitism as anti-Zionism, then anybody who is against the oppression of the Palestinians can be told that they're anti-Semitic. When that's not true, being against oppression has nothing to do with Jewish identity. Zionism is a settler movement. They colonized Palestine. They moved in there and took control. Zionism needs to oppress the Palestinians because they want an ethno-state. And if Palestinians live inside of Israel, they can't have an ethno-state. So they have to force them out They have to force them away to expand. They can't have the Palestinians there. A lot of these laws and lawmakers are trying to base their definitions off of the IHRA, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's definition of anti-Semitism, which not only says that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, but also says that comparing Zionists to Nazis is anti-Semitic. Both Nazism and Zionism are in the same bucket, in the same category. They're both extreme right movements. They're both nationalist movements. They both wanted an ethno-state. The only difference between the two is that the ideal human, the ideal population between the two is different. Aryans, Zionist, Jews. Nobody can say I'm wrong when I tell you that Nazism is a terrible, hateful, extreme right ideology. What's the difference between criticizing one dangerously hateful ideology and the next? I wish I had enough time in this video to show you how similar the extreme government that's currently running Israel is to Nazi Germany's government and their practices and policies. I've made videos nearly 10 minutes long talking about this. I want you to go find them if you are interested, because the exact similarities are uncanny. Zionists want to protect themselves from being criticized. Showing the similarities between Zionists and Nazis is one of the strongest arguments I think you could make. They want to stop people from being able to make those comparisons. Anyways, that's all for this video. Thank you for watching. If you want to support me as a person, I'm saving to go to college this year. You can go to my bio to help out. Thank you, and free Palestine.
All right, so here's a few things, okay? First of all, not everybody who's anti-Zionist is anti-Semitic, even though they're effectively are supporting something that hurts Jewish people a lot. They're not intentionally, all of them are being anti-Semitic. But let's be honest, a lot of them are, okay? A lot of people hide their anti-Jewish hatred behind just acting like they're just against Israel. And once you start listening to them and their arguments and the things that they get angry over, it's pretty obvious. Like, at least be honest enough to acknowledge that a lot of anti-Zionism that we're seeing, a lot of anti-Israel that we're seeing, is fueled by anti-Jewish hatred. Even if you want to make the point that not all of it are, which I will agree with you, not all of it is, but at least say it. Look, I'm being honest. I'm mentioning both sides. I acknowledge the people who are maybe against Israel but don't hate Jewish people. So I acknowledge that. So why don't you also provide the other side? Why don't you also acknowledge that a lot of anti-Jewish hatred is hidden behind all of this anti-Zionism or anti-Israel take? Like, at least mention the existence of it. Go on, Rivka.
Okay, this kid, my head wanted to explode. And I wanted to reach through the screen and grab him. So first of all, I'm on the International Holocaust Remembrance, the IHRA page, and I can read you what it says about definition of anti-Semitism. And it says, certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred toward Jews, rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed toward Jews or non-Jewish individuals and their property, towards Jewish communities, institutions, religious facilities. That's one aspect of it. And then they make all these things, but it doesn't say anything about Zionism. But the thing that he's failing to understand is criticizing an ideology, but then saying stuff like Israel has no right to exist. Israelis don't have a right to exist. That, I think, definitely hides a lot of anti-Semitism, because or it was a made-up country, or it's their settlers, all of these things, which, by the way, all of those countries in the region were made up, if you want to bring that up. Lebanon, the borders of Iraq, the borders of, there's so much of that kind of thing. But this idea, the thing that really gets me is he, again, is making his argument based on assumptions that are lies that people think are true. They're settlers. They're not indigenous. So they just keep building this mountain of lies. And so in order to take it down, you have to keep going lower and lower and lower. It's very difficult to have to keep peeling away this onion, because he's built this whole thing on things that aren't necessarily true. But the thing that really made me crazy is this Holocaust inversion tactic that people like to use a lot. to get Jews, and it got me. It makes me mad, you know. But his thing about the comparison between not what the Israel is doing and what the Nazis did. There's no concentration camps. They're not putting their Arab citizens in jail. They haven't, you know, people have said things that are hateful and bigoted in Israel. Absolutely. That doesn't mean they're Nazis. And
So every country has that.
This was exactly what I was going to say. But the way he said, no one can dispute with me that Nazism is bad. It's such a childlike argument. The pinnacle in modern thought of bad people, bad governments, hate are Nazis. So if you say Nazis are bad, no one's going to disagree with me, because we already all think that they're the worst that could possibly be. They're almost like not even real almost in some people's minds. And if I say the Jews are Nazis, what I'm really saying, or the Israelis are Nazis, what I'm really saying is they're the worst that ever existed. And everybody knows that. So boom, argument done. You know, I don't have to provide evidence. I don't have to bring the other side. I don't have to think logically. I don't have to dissect these arguments, whether they're true or not. I just have to say they're Nazis. Nazis are bad. Therefore, they're bad. Boom. End of argument.
Okay, I have 3 points to make. Okay, first of all, I've been to Israel. I talked to a lot of people. And when you ask them what Zionism means, you get different answers, right? So given that you get different answers, when I think of Zionism, I try to see what is the common, thing that you could find among all these definitions. No, it's basically Israel existing. If you think Israel should exist, the idea of Israel existing, okay, that is Zionism. So basically, Zionism to me, based on everything, so we have bad versions of Zionism and reasonable versions of Zionism. We have like crazy fascist Zionists, and we have liberal, sane Zionists. We have all kinds of Zionists, right? But to this core, it's basically Israel's nationalism. That's what Zionism is. So just like nationalism, where we have like crazy fascistic nationalism, and we have civic forms of nationalism, which is in line with liberal values, Zionism also have like different strains of it, good ones and bad ones. But Zionism is basically Israel's nationalism. That's all it is. Okay. So, and given that even if you're not trying to be anti-Jewish by saying Israel should not exist, if you're against Zionism, you're basically against Israel's existing. And here, I'm not misrepresenting what Zionism here, given that what at least he thinks Israel shouldn't exist. So when he's anti-Zionist, I'm not putting words in his mouth by saying that he thinks Israel shouldn't exist, because he made it clear that he's against Israel existing even as a country, which is very hypocritical for a person that has a U.S. flag behind them. I mean, is that supportive of U.S.? Like, is this guy a proud American? Like, is that what the flag is supposed to represent? Right? Isn't that like, I don't understand. Like, this guy has a U.S. flag around.
I think that,
I don't know.
To your point about existence and Zionism, it definitely is. And that's why I brought that up about saying they shouldn't exist. But also, it's an idea of self-determination, which for Jewish people, and I think that this guy being American is really interesting, because Americans are really about that.
Yeah, let me finish my point. Okay, so he is, so here's why I say that this guy, even if he's not intending, he's being anti-Jewish, right? Because United States Foundation was a lot more aggressive than Israel's foundation. Okay, like if you're looking for genocide, look in US's foundation, okay, and what they did to the natives. And we're not arguing, nobody's arguing for United States not to exist, even though it had a very bloody, barbaric, genocidal foundation. But when Israel was founded, they didn't start the war. The people who came there didn't start the war. They were attacked. And then they responded to 6 countries attacking to them. attacking on them. There were enough land when Israel was founded. We had enough land for everybody to go around. That land did not belong to anybody, because the only legal entity that owned that land was the Ottoman Empire, and the Ottoman Empire didn't exist anymore. Other places we already had countries. We had no countries here. It made sense for us to, when we were looking for Jews and the right for them to have the right to self-determination and the right to control their own destiny, if we wanted to give Jews a country, this was an ideal spot, not because this was the land of their ancestors, but because there was no country here. This was no one's country. The Ottoman Empire had failed, and there was empty land for everybody to go around. And given how much anti-Jewish hatred was all around Europe and other places in the Middle East, this was a great place. And if the Arab countries did not attack the Jews right at the foundation of Israel, this would have been a win-win for everybody. So this is not even comparable to the brutality of the foundations of the United States. This could have been a lot more civil if the Arab countries didn't attack the Jews and they just accepted two countries, Palestine and Israel, living side by side. So, but you are against Israel's foundation existing because of that foundation, and you are celebrating United States as a country with a flag behind you. So what is the difference? The difference is one of them is Jewish. Again, this is why I'm saying that we don't go around and saying other countries shouldn't exist. Other countries also had much more bloodier, much more genocidal, much more brutal foundations. I mean, 22 out of the 22 Arab countries that we have, right? 21 of them was founded in this way, through conquest, through bloodshed. I don't see people going around and saying they shouldn't exist. I don't see people going around and saying those Arab countries should be given back to whoever the people were before then. I don't see people going out and saying give back Canada to the natives or give Australia back to the natives. No same. I mean, there's some crazy people do, but he's not doing that. He's not doing that with the United States. He's a proud American. He looks European to me. What are you doing in North America? Go back to Europe. Like he should go back to Europe.
That's part.
So
of
what is it about Israel?
It's
what is it about Israel?
They're Jews.
Yeah.
And also, it's not just that they're Jews. I'm sorry, I'm making an emotional argument here, but I really do feel this is true. It's not just that they're Jews, it's that they successfully defend their country. They won those wars. They weren't. I honestly feel like there is this strain of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism that is against Israel and Jews simply because they haven't failed, because they're not laying down and dying, because they're willing to defend themselves. And the point that you were making
that's
about
a claim.
The not existence.
But that's our claim.
It's true.
Yeah, go on.
Where that's big part of it. I've heard people say they shouldn't exist. It's a sham. It's, it's a colony, all of these things. But I don't hear that argument from about any other countries. And this idea that you can't criticize Israel, that's BS. People criticize it all the time. In Israel, Israelis criticize it. So, and his Nazi thing, I keep going back to that because that is this psychological trick that he's playing on people. By inverting this Holocaust narrative and saying that these people shouldn't exist because they're Nazis. Just like we wiped the Nazis out, we have to wipe out this country and this ideology and these people.
So, Rivka, the point I'm trying to make here, our claim is that this is about Israel being Jews, okay? But this is our claim. The reason I'm trying to provide two evidence for why this claim is true, right? Because the double standard, because no country is being held to the standard that Israel is being held to when it comes to its right to exist, because that's what Zionism is, right? Zionism is Israel's right to exist. And when you question Zionism, you're questioning Israel's right to exist in a way that you don't question other countries' right to exist. So what is it about Israel that is different? So that's my evidence that this is about them being Jews. That's my evidence that why anti-Zionism is anti-Jewish hatred. because you don't have the same standard for other countries' right to exist. That's one. Another reason, okay? This guy seems to be a leftist American that is proud to have an American flag behind him, okay? I'm almost sure that he's not proud to have had Trump as a president. Almost sure, okay? But imagine the hypocrisy when you want to question Zionism and Israel's rights to existence because they have a right-leaning government. And you're like, hey, listen, I know I have told you things, credible things about like the government of Israel. Okay, what about you? You had Trump. I mean, you don't endorse Trump. So should we question United States rights to existence because you had Trump as president? Like, again, should we, let me go further.
How about
Does
Iran?
Exactly, that's what I wanted to say. Exactly. Does Iran has a right to exist as a country? Do Iranian people have a right to have Iran, given that their government is worse than Likud? Their government is the Islamic Republic of Iran. They have the number one state sponsor of terror as their government. Should we now deny Iran's right to exist because of the bad government? What are you talking about? Yes, it doesn't fall. Again, the double standard. You're like, oh my God, this government is so far right. Yes, and why are you questioning Zionism because of that? Why are you questioning Israel's right to exist because of that? Is it because they're Jewish? If it's not because they're Jewish, why the double standard? Why other countries are not held to the same standard? That's why we think so many times that anti-Zionism is anti-Jewish hatred. That's why these are the steps that we take. We notice the double standard around the world.
It gives good cover to people too. And I think your point about the government is really important because people always talk about that. Like, look at this, the Likuds, look at some of their far right leanings, look at some of the things they wanted to do, as if it's the only government that has ever existed in the history of Israel or will ever exist, right? This is a easy talking point for people. Oh, I don't like Netanyahu, Likuds are, far right, therefore the whole country's bad. And your point about Trump or Iran, you don't see that people say when people talk about the Islamic Republic, they always make a point to say, oh, but the people of Iran are separate from this. And they do this with the Hamas. It's not the Palestinians, it's the Hamas. But for some reason, they can't separate the people in Israel or the idea of Israel from who happens to be in power at that moment. Because right before this, they had a different coalition just recently.
Yeah.
So it is anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
It is this idea that these people in this place don't have a right to exist.
Yeah, they and these people often would not tell you, and here's the hypocrisy. They're so anti-Israel that they won't tell you that the only reason why we know so much garbage about Likud is because of Israel's media and Israel's journalism and all the people, all the brave activists and journalists in Israel that go and dig this stuff up for us, for you to come take all the amazing work by Israeli journalists and to use it against Israel's existence as a whole, without giving credit to the Israelis who managed to dig out these information.
Not only managed to dig it out, but present it to the world and live to tell about it the next day, unlike a lot of other places.
Exactly. Yes,
so
exactly.
They go out there, they say these things, and then they go home and get up the next morning and do it again.
Yes. So we got a couple of super chats. Guys, please. Not everybody has to use the super chat, but we appreciate some people doing, because we need that to be able to make sure that we continue these streams, or else because we get demonetized. So thank you for everybody who's using the super chat. But what if I told you? What if I told you for the low price of 0 cents, you get to support the show by just liking the stream? Isn't that a great deal? You pay nothing other than half a second, and we benefit by this channel growing. So just like the stream, please, guys. I don't know what excuse you have for not liking the stream. So please just take half a second and like the stream. Thank you so much. So the super chats, Troel saying, since Rivka, in heart in parentheses, was not here when I told this joke to Anna and Roy, what do you call pork from a pig's ass? Hamas. That's a good one. Dad jokes. Thank you so much, Sherelle, for the super chat. Yusuf is saying the CCP is the one that's similar to the Nazis. Yeah, the closest one, at least, given the concentration camps that they had. Thank you for the super chat. And $20 from HG Drake. Thank you so much for the super chat, saying this kid with zero life experience and an undeveloped prefrontal cortex seems totally indoctrinated. How do we combat this? You know how do we combat this? By supporting this channel, okay? Because we are doing the combating for you. You guys have to just support this channel by liking, by once the stream is over, leave a comment on there. But guys, I'm now making short less than 1 minute videos off of these streams. I'm putting it on TikTok. Armin Navabi TikTok. Yeah, I'm on TikTok now, guys. I'm now going to be more active on TikTok. So how do we combat this? That guy is on TikTok. Go find Armin Navabi on TikTok and follow me there. So now when I make short videos off of our streams, if you are following me there and liking there, maybe like we could fight TikTok with TikTok. Okay, so that's how you combat this. So support me here, follow me on TikTok and on Twitter and on Instagram and everywhere else. And then what else to do? Oh yeah, subscribe, hit the bell notification, and tell your friends and especially your enemies to come and subscribe to this channel and hit the bell notification. That's how you combat this, okay? By supporting people like me or other content creators who are pushing back, okay? That's how we fight back. All right, good. We went over time, but it was good. We didn't finish all the videos, but we will continue doing this.
Next time.
Next time, yes, next time. We have a lot of videos. All right, guys. I'm gonna go do now my Persian show for people in Iran and some other Iranians and Afghanis and Tajiks whoever speaks Persian outside of Iran. So if you speak Persian, come to the Jamhuriya Bi Khodayan channel because we're having a stream starting in a couple of hours there. Anyways, guys, bye. Oh, show your shirt, Rivka. Show your shirt.
Oh, hi means life.
Hi. Yes, life. All right, guys. Bye.
Bye.